Thank you for tuning in to the Growing SLOcal Podcast. In this week's episode, we are joined by April of Making SLO. Welcome to episode 3 of the Growing SLOcal Podcast. Today, I am joined by April. She is the owner of Making SLO, which is a store in downtown San Luis Obispo. Now, I want to call it an artisanal consignment shop, but that might sound awkward. So what is Making SLO?
I say maker store because that seems to be something that people are familiar with. Sometimes when I say that, people are like, what does that mean?
Right.
And then I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but it's like a local Etsy.
Fair.
So that, there's people who make things.
Right.
They're all from the local community.
And from the local community, what kind of boundaries are we talking?
For the most part, within the county, San Luis Obispo County.
Okay.
Technically speaking, I have several makers that are in Santa Maria. And so that's out of the county. It's in Santa Barbara County.
How far you go.
Technically. Yeah. So, for ease of use too, it's like Central Coast is what we're sticking to. But it's as close as possible. I really look for people that are in San Luis Obispo area.
So Making SLO is a maker's store.
Yes.
That's how you would say it.
That's what I call it because we do have a couple of places, one in Pismo, Natural Toolbox, one in Morrow Made, and that's usually how they refer to themselves because it's featuring local makers. Of course, that's also artists. It's a variety of people creating things.
Right. So you in your store, which let me make sure. It's a maker's store that is in what used to be a bride and groom
Jewelry.
fitting or...
It was Marshall's Jewelry for a really long time.
Okay.
Starting from 75 up into I think it was 2018 or something like that.
Okay.
So we get the plush red carpet.
Yep.
And then the huge statement chandelier. This is quite astonishing. Sometimes when I talk about it, people are like, oh, I didn't even notice that. It's very eye-catching. Yeah. And then the glass walls, we've got a couple of those. Interesting wrought iron gates. Everybody knows the outside.
Right.
It's such a iconic building downtown.
It is.
On a corner with the gates and everything. I know I've seen that building. I walked right by that building, but I've never been inside.
Yep. Walked by hundreds of times throughout my adolescence, for sure. So it's in that old store, and it houses merchandise that's been created in any sense of what creating entails, whether it's art or crafting a bracelet, making a shirt.
Exactly.
From creators exclusive or as exclusive as possible to SLO County.
Right. Yes.
Cool.
That is our main thing. And the idea is that we want to have a way for the local creatives to be able to showcase their work and for it to funnel back into the local economy.
Great. Yeah, and I mean, you're doing a great job of it, I would say, because in the few times I've been to your store, probably 5 times throughout the past 3-ish months. I think we met back in May. Is
that right? The expo? Yeah.
Time has flown.
I think so. Right.
Yeah. We met back in May. I've been to your store about 5 times since. And every time I've gone in, merchandise has either sold, moved, been displayed in a different fashion.
Oh, yeah.
It seems that you put a lot of time, care, and consideration into how you present all of these very special products made right here in SLO County.
Yeah.
So it's a maker store. You got local makers, a little bit of everything. Why? Why did you want to do this? Or what compelled you to create this kind of business in downtown SLO and embark on a life-changing path?
That's true. It has been life-changing. Well, I had been thinking about it for a long time, and in what kind of iteration or version would actually come about was a bit different from what I initially visioned. However, having this space, which is quite unique, that also dictated a little bit of it, obviously, working with that. When we saw it, we're like, okay, it's got funkiness going on, but I think we can work with that and lean into it because it is, interesting, artistic wise. And so being able to utilize that, I did actually initially only prepare for a pop-up. So technically, like, this space was only available short-term lease, and they're going to work on the building. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, we can test it because I don't want to jump into something that I don't really know how it's going to work out. So I was about 4 to 5 months testing it. And the response from the community, being able to interact with everybody and them saying, we really love having a place to go. We want to be able to support artists, and we really need this, was what I heard from a lot of people. And the makers themselves obviously wanted a place to show their work because the vast majority go to markets, like makers markets that are going on in all the different cities, which is a great way to like interact with your customers and get sales, obviously, because you need a way to sell. But that's a lot of work too. And they would like to have a place where, like, if someone's buying from them at a market and they say, well, if I want to buy something else from you, where do I find you? And instead of pointing them to Etsy or maybe they have a website, maybe they don't, but it's great to be able to say, you can find my pieces at a store in the area. So that was part of when I was thinking about this idea. I was asking makers at markets that I would meet to purchase things for myself. How do you feel about having a place? Would you like to have a location to be able to showcase your work? And by far, the feedback was that that would be a more ideal scenario for them.
Yeah. And I think it's so special what you're doing, because when you make a product and you want to bring it into a store, if that is what you're trying to do, that is a very long process sometimes, a very complicated process. And sometimes, depending on how much of your stuff the business wants, you might not even be able to produce enough to meet whatever their purchase quota is.
That's very true.
And so what you provide, at least in my estimate, is for everybody out there who's created something that they're proud of and they love and they want to show it off, or present it to people and see if there's value in it. Not everything that you create is going to have outstanding value. But the pet rock that you just wind up creating out of nowhere sells, 500 million of them.
Right.
But it allows people to bypass those very tricky processes and get in at the ground floor, selling to the community that they're already a part of. Like it provides that in
right
to the market.
It's definitely, I view it as a stepping stone, especially for creatives that are looking to grow their business. because there are a lot of aspects where they would need to learn more about how to get into a store. Obviously, smaller local boutiques might have an easier entry, as it were.
Right.
But growing and getting bigger, depending on how far they want to take that, is going to require a lot more investment, but learning how to do that. And the way that I've ended up taking the store probably after the holiday season, about 4 or 5 months in, I realized I do like where my passion lies is really helping local creatives with their business on growth and like what those steps are in order to connect with their customers and in order to increase value and quality. So being able to help them with those things and see that growth is really cool. But I also want to be able to help them say, hey, I make this really cool thing that would fit really well in this store nearby. So how do I get from there to that place? And that's one of the things that I've been working on with the makers, is actually being able to go through a process of what can you do with your product to be able to get in other places.
And mentioning it as a stepping stone, that makes perfect sense, because it's like, how do I get into, these fancy boutique displays that I always see, or how do I get my merchandise into a shipper, that winds up on a side panel or an end stand at, some store. You give the creative an opportunity to submit a much better value proposition, because you're giving them the data entry point. Like everything that you can extrapolate from sales data gives them the hard data that they would need to be able to present some of these larger companies who would want a more tested proof of concept.
Right.
So you're able to be a little bit more flexible and creative with your makers, because you're the business owner,
Right.
and you're operating it from a consignment basis, which is inherently more flexible, at least to my understanding.
Right.
I could be completely wrong.
I view it that way too.
Okay.
Yeah. It serves a purpose on both ends. And what I really wanted the store to be was a win-win-win, so that, makers are able to show their work, be able to make money off of their pieces. Because I also feel very strongly about, if you're a creative and you really want to pursue your passion for creating things and connect with the community, like that would be great. That would be wonderful if you can get something. Hopefully it takes a while, but at some point to be able to make a living off of it, to be able to actually have money from what you're making. Like that's it's a lot of the part of, the commercial structure. So being able to do that, and also for the customers to be able to connect with the artists in their community, that's another win. And on my side, having the store which is also part of my passion, to be able to have a place where a lot of creatives can come together, show their work, be able to have that interface with the community. That's another win. So that was my goal, is to really have that, all of those connecting.
Yeah. And it's win, 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 as far as I'm concerned, for Making SLO. Because the benefit to the creator is outstanding. The benefit to you personally is you get to do this business and provide for yourself. The benefit to the act of creating in general is this is going to show people that there's a way in for you, and it doesn't have to seem like this insurmountable scary topic of, from designing a product to creating it to trying it out in a store to getting it past that initial store. It's just invaluable, simply.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I mentioned in my article that I wrote about you. It's your passion to drive sustainable creativity in SLO County. Is you want people to feel like there's a way in.
Right.
You want people to understand that they can talk to you and maybe have a better shot at putting pen to paper.
Right.
Right?
Definitely. Yes.
Awesome. So that is your business and the kind of role that it serves to your creators, your customers, and you. I want to talk a little bit about some of the specific merchandise that you have.
Okay.
Because I do want to make sure that people can see examples of some of the great things they'll find in your store. Obviously, the best way to find out what's in Making SLO is to go into Making SLO and walk around, because it's definitely different than these pictures. These pictures are a little old.
Oh, yeah. And what you said, actually, what you were talking about, we change up the displays quite a bit. And I just had someone telling me, I was in there and I was looking at something, and then by the time I went back, it wasn't there anymore. Maybe you need to warn people. Like, okay, I know, like, it is a bit frustrating when you go to like Costco or a grocery outlet or something and you bought something you really liked and you go back and you're like, what's up? And they don't have it anymore. But in this case, a lot of times there are one-of-a-kind pieces. So if somebody buys it, like, that's probably not going to be available again. There are some things that get produced again, that especially things that sell quicker and the maker is able to get it produced multiple times. And then there's other times that we might have it for just a short period, especially seasonal items.
Right.
And then they go back to the maker. We have had some people, if you notice that there was something there, decided not to buy it then, which it could have been sold to somebody else at that point. I can't do anything about that. But if you come back, you can always ask, because we have had customers say, oh, hey, I saw there was this hat that had such and such. And a lot of times I know what they're asking about, and I can reach out to the maker if it did happen to be a piece that we gave back to them and swapped out for something. Sometimes we can get it back. So that's an option potentially.
So you work with the creators in real time sometimes to help customers with special requests.
Also that.
Or like bulk
So
orders.
we have done, and that's why I say it can be kind of like a local Etsy.
Yeah.
You can actually special order things. And we have several instances of where we've helped customers get something specific.
Really?
Yes. And actually, one great example is we'll find out what color. Obviously, there's certain colors to choose from. Pick a color and then tell her what kind of design. I have some great examples on my phone, but it would take too long to get them up there. Like, someone specifically requested a Prince-themed art aspect on a lavender, like lilac colored hat. It's really pretty. Came out beautiful. So she's done a lot of custom pieces for our customers, actually. And for instance, actually that one, Emily, she'll do custom mugs as well. The resin that we saw, Amy, she'll do boards that are also custom, and she does engraving. So a lot of them are like wedding gifts, or like real estate agents will use her boards and put like their logo on the back as a housewarming gift. So there's a lot of instances of that, as well as we have a bit of a bridal collection. And those can all be customized. Like one of our artists, Jane, will do an original painting of a flower. You can pick a flower and put a name on there of like the bride or a bridesmaid. And then we have chain stitch embroidery. Also by Melissa, she'll put a name on a sweatshirt or bridesmaid. Like there's all kinds of options.
So people can't, okay. So Making SLO serves as a conduit for literally every positive creative thing that could come as a result of somebody meeting you.
As much as possible, we will try to make something happen.
Because, I mean, that's pretty incredible. Like anybody can just walk into your shop and be like, I really need... I need 12 funny hats for a very specific purpose, but I need 12 funny hats and I want it to be made by somebody local.
Right.
And I have this, for any particular reason, I happen to really like daisies. And you're like, hey, I know a guy or girl or whatever
Right.
that makes outstanding custom daisy hats.
Right.
And they're based out of SLO. I can put you in contact with them. You can be the liaison for demand to meet supply.
Right.
That is so cool.
My goal is to expand that a little more. Right now I'm focused on what we have in the store, but if someone comes up and they're like, I'm looking for a coffee table or something, I'll try to think of the people that I've met, even if they're not in the store, and connect them. I'd love to be able to further expand that at some point, possibly next year. But for like the specific custom pieces, the artists in the store, we have so many makers and artists that enjoy doing custom pieces. And a lot of times they can't hold all of their work in the store. If I had every option that was available, I couldn't house it all. So when I hear about what somebody might be thinking of, then I'll think of who might fit that and then reach out to them and say, hey, there's somebody asking about this and this. Is that something that you could do? And then we get it going for them.
Wow. So knowing you and being willing to do business with you in the first place opens these makers up to a world of opportunity, because maybe the makers aren't seeing, I don't know what your average customer count is, but sure, they're not seeing 400 people a day, but you're seeing 400 people a day, and you're advocating on behalf of these creators to fulfill the needs of whoever comes into your store.
Right.
Wow.
Yep. As much as we can. I love doing that.
That is what makes Making SLO so special in my estimate. That's so cool. And it just perpetually gives back. And you're always going to be reciprocating excess value than you're getting in the first place. Somebody's always going to receive more from you than they gave.
Oh yeah, definitely. And our wonderful makers and artists, like they're the ones that make this all possible. So
Right.
I love what they put into everything, and the ability to be able to adapt and also the enjoyment and that they get from creating and get excited about being able to make something special for people in their community. So that's what makes it extra special.
Cool. Making SLO makes SLO make faster.
There you go.
Sure. Something like that.
When we first came up with the name, we wanted to make it's a way to lead to something a little bit different. So making slow, and for one thing, it's a continuous process making, right? And then we started kind of thinking like, well, does this sound cheesy? Maybe it does, but I think it kind of works. I haven't fully leaned into it quite yet, but coming up with adjectives like making slow beautiful, making slow fun, making slow creative. So all of the things that you can, make, or the feeling that you get from seeing these creative things also works with it. So
Yeah. Yeah, maybe something like making slow vibes.
oh, there
Or
you go.
something like
He
that.
does
Okay.
a burning process, and this is just like her coming up with all kinds of cool art. She's done an octopus on hats, all kinds of things, and they're they're just beautiful.
Yeah, and there are hats that are more like like your average day out hat, like regular ball cap
Right.
style with the engraving still burnt in, or
She
however
does
you
have
want
a
to say that.
few. Yes.
Yeah.
She
So
has a
there's
few of those styles. I actually
that
have
style and that.
a navy one that she did flowers on.
Oh, nice.
That was my request. I always go with blues, navies.
Nice. So Making Slow is a place where creators can go to have access to the market and have access to a consistent stream of customers who are interested in buying things made locally.
Right.
Now, what are the impacts of that? I know that you mentioned that you wanted to share some great results. However, much of that you want to share is completely up to you, but
Right.
now might be a good time to talk about it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So we just what's today? We're about 11 months in. We opened October 6th. And so we're not quite at that year mark, but as it is at 11 months, we're right now currently paying out for the sales of August. So for that, our payouts have just hit a little over 160,000 for that period between October through August.
And that's the payout going to the creators.
To all the makers and artists that have been in the store.
Okay, so this is what the creators are receiving,
Right.
In terms of like you made a sale
From sales.
benefit.
Yes.
Okay.
And we do, the commission structure is 70% that goes back to the maker, the artist, based on what has sold. So that's based on that. And, I don't know what the typical numbers are, but I think that that's good. If you average it out, then it's about 14,000 a month.
Yeah.
And to me, that's exciting because I know that that's going back to local people.
Yeah.
Like that affects the local economy. It's not just going to random places that are governed by big corporations.
Right. Because the money that buys these locally made products, it goes to you. It's then transferred to the creator. The creator can then do with that revenue, whatever they'd like.
Right.
Hopefully it's to make more cool things or to create tools or employ resources to make even cooler things.
Exactly. For many, it's an investment back into their business
Right.
to be able to take those steps as it's, take those stepping stones to grow. And actually what's really, really cool, and this is what we've done ourselves in creating our own products, many of the makers feel like it's important to support the local companies that create things. So a lot will use local companies to help in the manufacturing and production of their product. So for instance, if you're doing a design and you're putting it on a t-shirt, usually that's a graphic designer or an illustrator that has created the graphic, but they don't themselves know how to do screen printing or whatever process they're going to do to actually put it on the shirt.
Right.
So a lot use actually local companies in order to create that product, and then they sell it locally. So that's really like the goal, is to feed back into that local ecosystem of being able to produce these goods and then having the consumers be able to benefit, that it is still benefiting their local economy in multiple ways.
So the local creators utilize local tools or resources to create their products, which are then purchased by local people.
Right.
And
Or visitors.
Yeah, which are purchased by people, and it is a positive, like, reciprocal cycle of people benefiting from creating locally, purchasing locally, consuming locally, rely locally.
Exactly. Just feeding back into the local economy. That's really the bigger, stronger goal and passion of how to get that going.
Right. Okay, so that was the first really encouraging bit of data. What other encouragement have you noticed?
So I picked two of our artists just as examples and ran some numbers. So one of them is our top seller. She's been selling really well for quite a while.
And is that Anglin Made?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me
Shout out to Brooke.
Yes, Brooke with Anglin Made, Slow Babe and Slow Dude.
Right.
So you've got the Slow Babe hats.
Slow Babe hats. She also has, there's just a few of the t-shirts there. That's one of them. This is very popular.
This is one she made?
She came out with this year, and it's been so popular.
It's beautiful.
It is. It's super cool. And it's based on a print. You actually might have had a picture of that as well. But she's an illustrator. And so she had an art print of it that she created, and then decided to do a version that would work on a shirt.
Oh, really?
And that's screen printed by a local company. So she's a really good example of someone who utilizes a local company to actually produce those goods for her. And many times what I really appreciate it, because when you start getting into numbers and you know how things are produced, it means more. Like when I hear that Brooke wants to utilize a local company, or any number of our makers that do that, they know that they're paying more typically than what it could cost them to produce something.
Right.
And that's a little bit of the hard part too. As a small maker, you don't get the big price breaks that these huge companies get, because you're not ordering hundreds of
50,000 of
dollars.
these, and you'll save 50 cents, whatever.
Exactly. So they're paying pennies on the dollar for their goods to be able to be produced. And then, what these local makers are doing are spending top dollar sometimes to be able to produce those goods. So when you look at actual margins based on what they're selling, they're not going to get as much from that sell. But it's part of the importance of keeping it local and keeping it true to the art form and how their values connect with that. So I feel like that's also an important aspect to it.
Yeah, and it is hard to keep costs low. And one of the things that I've been trying to grapple with in my head recently is that there's an appropriate cost for everything to be produced. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the damage that we've done is trying to falsely make it cheaper. Mm-hmm. And to your point, with local makers utilizing local tools and resources to make their stuff, as that local maker succeeds, that local producer also gets business benefit from that, and it allows them to sustain their business better too.
Right.
And I mean, this is all kind of just like routine knowledge of how like money transfers from place to place and like helps different portions of the economy with their specific subsections of responsibility. But it's important that we all take the time to think about the far-reaching impacts of our purchasing habits.
Right.
And Making SLO to me is kind of like the embodiment of a conduit of value statements that can help everybody understand how to make more sustainable businesses.
Right. That's great.
I
like
think
that.
that's what Making SLO really, like, that's what's so cool about your business to me.
It did.
So Anglin Maids
Yes.
results.
Going to Brooke. So interestingly enough, typically the holiday season is like the busiest quarter for a lot of people. Well, and then as soon as January hits, you see like a dramatic drop off. She really was able to continue what she did from the fourth quarter, was able to meet sales in the next quarter. And then by the second quarter, so starting in April, actually increased by 113% over the first quarter.
Fantastic.
So that was huge growth. And then as we get further into the year, we're obviously 2 months into the third quarter right now. And the first 2 months, she's already matched her sales that she did in the second quarter.
Fantastic.
So she's on a really good momentum. She's been purposefully adding in more pieces. We get specific requests. This is another thing that is unique. And I'm going to share something that's actually connected to her and her shirts. Because when we first opened, one of the things I like to ask people is, especially when I knew locals were coming to the store, and when we first opened, I was like, you know what? I really want to have pieces in here that locals would appreciate. So, you know, while you're doing your shopping, what are you looking for? Like, do you have any specific requests of what you would like to see in the store? I've asked that to so many people. And because of that, we've actually brought in a lot of different products, and it's created its own way for a lot of these creatives to expand their business, because it could be that they didn't even think of making something that specific until I said, oh, hey, we're looking at wanting to add this particular product. So who can make this? That's how we ended up getting magnets, keychains, a lot of things that visitors really wanted too, but then locals that would take them out of town. So with Brooke's pieces, I didn't have any t-shirts in the store. When we first opened, I thought, oh, if I bring apparel in, that's going to be a mess. People are going to be wanting to like exchange or return because it doesn't fit. We don't have a dressing room. So I don't want to deal with that. You know, like,
at least you're honest.
Like, that's just, it seems like a pain. So one of the locals came in, him and his wife, and his name is Connor. And we were having a conversation, and I'm like, hey, what would you want to see in a store? And so he started going on about the kind of t-shirts that he would want to see. He's like, I bought this shirt one time and it was really cool, and it had like I think he said, if I remember this right, Godzilla attacking the Fremont or something like that.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. It's like something that's connected to the area, you know? So I'm like, okay, well, I know Brooke showed me her catalog, and I just told her to bring in prints and stickers, but she did have a shirt, so maybe I should bring in the shirt. So I went and grabbed the sheet that she left with me, and I showed it to him, and I said, so if I got this shirt in, would you buy it? Like, is this a shirt that you would like? And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't had shirts in the store. He's like, oh yeah, that looks cool. Yeah. So I told her, like, hey, let's bring in this shirt. So she brought it in. He came back, he bought one. And then a little bit later, he decided, he's like, I've been looking up these historical documents, and there's like super cool writing, like lettering that is done on these pieces that are like from the 1800s and early 1900s. Mm-hmm. And I want to recreate this art. Would you sell it in the store if I came up with some products with that? You might have pictures of those, but and so I said, sure, let's try it out. So he made stickers, he made magnets, and then actually we now have t-shirts that he did featuring some of that art. So it's kind of became an interesting full circle moment.
So Making SLO also serves as a hub where demand, which are your customers, they'll come in, they'll sort of like proposition you and be like, hey, I need like these sorts of things. How do I get it? And you utilize the demand from the customer along with the business results for these specific makers to help them make good like growth decisions.
Exactly.
Like you help them plan the next phases of their product lines. Like have you become like the person? Like, are you the kingpin?
Well, I don't know about that. But I love product development, actually, personally. And so I get excited when makers are like, we have those discussions and like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, this, and this. And I'm like, I will give you whatever feedback I can. You know, if I'm stating my personal opinion, I'm going to say that. This is how I personally view it and take that with a grain of salt. Or I'm going to say, this is the feedback that I've gotten from customers coming in the store. This is what I've observed. For instance, actually, this was a good example of the t-shirts. A lot of people were looking for a certain brand of t-shirts. And when I told that to Brooke, we discussed that a little more and like, hey, it seems like they're wanting to go for comfort colors because they like it's a heavyweight, it's a thicker, it's got a different texture to it. And she went that route. It's going great. She sees growth from that.
And that's incredible because I'm not sure, just on a rough estimate, how closely involved most business owners are in helping their vendors understand this is what your customers want more from you.
Right.
It's really, really outstanding that you can provide that level of insight, consistent communication, surveying, you're collecting all of that feedback and giving them good intel.
Right.
To just go out and do bigger, better things.
That's the hope. That's actually that's part of what I love about having the store, because again, to be straight up honest, I wasn't looking to be a retail store owner. It's like, that's a grind. It's relentless. It's a lot. It's like very intense schedule. Mm-hmm. But the purpose to it that I keep in mind, that's my real goal, is to really work with the local creatives to be able to help them on that business level so that they can benefit and be able to hopefully make a living, as close to that as possible, and just keep that growth and that momentum going so that they can really see benefits from pursuing their passions and keeping the arts alive.
And that, in and of itself, when I think back to that question of what do you want to be when you grow up? And let's say that I just really like playing the flute and I want to be a professional flautist when I grow up. The question that I would get, much to my chagrin, probably would have been, there's no money in that.
Right.
But you're helping people understand the money that's in their current idea,
Right.
and helping them make better decisions to hopefully impact them financially better
Right.
in the long run. So you're like a critical component of sort of like the scientific method of value proposition right here in what you're doing.
And because there's a lot of things, really, what I kind of refer to as like leveling up or upgrading is a key component. And so a lot of times I'll give advice like, have you looked into different packaging? How about adding a tag to the pieces that introduces you? One of the biggest things from going from markets to stores that I've been discussing with each maker is that the product needs to speak for itself on the shelf as much as possible, because they're not there personally interacting with customers to answer questions.
Right.
So each maker knows that when a customer comes up to their table at a market and they're looking at jewelry, what's one of the first questions they're going to ask?
Is it real?
Well, that might be. But typically it's, what kind of metal is this made with? People are concerned about hypoallergenic. It's like, is it gold plated? Is it gold filled? Is it real silver? Is it stainless steel? There's so many things that are focused on that kind of product. And they know that, because they've been interacting with customers in markets, but they're there to answer those questions. So if you're in a store, how are you going to convey the same information, in essence, answer the questions that are going to be at the top of your customers' minds without being there? And the simple answer is put the information with your product. So that's something that I've worked with a lot of makers on. And even artists, like if they have a local area that they're featuring, like a lot of people love art that's featuring the local area, right? You've got Cerro San Luis, the view from Terrace Hill of Cerro San Luis and Bishop Peak. And people want to know, is this Bishop Peak? Is this, Madonna Mountain, or technically Cerro San Luis? Is this Terrace Hill? So a lot of our artists have added pieces on the back of their prints, on the back of the frames, that says this is where the location is. And that just makes it even more interesting and connected to people, because they want to know what they're looking at.
Absolutely. Wow. Making SLO does lots of great things. But
there it is. That's the print she did.
There we go. Good. I found it. So
it was print first, and then she made it into a t-shirt version.
Got it. So anybody can meet you at your store if they have a business idea that they want to run by somebody, if they have a product idea that they're maybe missing a couple of components on. They can come to you and troubleshoot some of these ideas, or actively work with you to continue to create better things. That's
what I've been working with. I need to actually count up all the makers that I've had in the store. They're not all the same from the very beginning, but right now, 63. I think we had gotten up over 70 at some point during the holiday time. So that's the goal really, is to work with them as much as possible, and to also where they want it, So finding out, how much they want to be able to grow.
Right.
And that is why I lean more towards working with the small businesses as opposed to hobbyists, because there are a lot of people that will make things, but I may not bring them into the store for just the point of selling and showing their work.
Right.
I would love to. Like, I really feel like that's a whole nother aspect that would be great to be done. And that could be a huge store. There's a lot of talented, creative people.
Absolutely.
But I did start narrowing it down to, if you're wanting to be able to grow that business and be contrary to like what you were bringing up earlier, starving artists, or what's commonly known in the
right.
If you're an artist, like, can you really make a living off of that?
Right.
Kind of perspective that there is. I want it to be different than that. And we're talking about producing goods.
Exactly.
What I remind myself and also the makers is everything that we buy, like huge brands that we all know, started somewhere.
Right.
So why can't you do something with your creative business?
Exactly. And Making SLO provides that avenue. Mm-hmm. And I know you have crazy not crazy. You have
big plans,
ambitious, serious, and potentially extremely impactful hopes and dreams.
Yes.
That you're trying to accomplish in this Making SLO arc,
right.
Of your life right now.
Yeah.
And I know we're running short on time for this episode, but in future episodes, because I'm going to have you back, I want to talk about where you see Making SLO going,
right,
and what it will continue to represent as a business to San Luis Obispo and to the creators whose merchandise it houses.
Right.
Because if it works, and I think it will, if it works, you could be on the cusp of almost like an artisanal renaissance, and you're the store.
Yeah.
You're the avenue. And that's crazy special.
Right?
I'll say crazy there.
That would be
because that's crazy special.
Right.
And that's why I value Making SLO as a business so much, and why I wanted to get you here to talk about where this all comes from.
Right.
Because like, I know we didn't talk a whole lot about the pictures, and maybe that's kind of, my fault, but your business, Making SLO, is not just a store.
Right.
It's not just a place where you can go to find things made by local people. That is just the starting point of it.
Right.
If you're a creator, Making SLO could be what makes you eventually. Because all it takes is for somebody to say, I hear your idea. Here are 3 different things that you'll need for that. I know a specific person who can take care of this responsibility. And I have a guy who loves English lavender, and he will get as much to you as you need. And like from there, it's created, and then the rest is history. Like it's a very important butterfly effect where you're learning how to tell creators, yes, you can do that.
Right.
You can.
And actually, you're making a good segue into what I'll just give you as a sneak peek into what's hopefully happening next year.
Okay.
Is a bit of a different iteration of Making SLO, and leaning more into the business development, product development part of it, because that's really where I would like to take it more. And the name that I picked is Collabtivity.
Collabtivity.
Yes. So that's where collaboration meets creativity.
Wow.
And that's gonna be
Collabtivity.
one of the next phases.
I'm going to get a forehead tattoo of collabtivity.
Nice.
No, but I'm going to be very excited to talk to you about that. If you haven't been to Making SLO yet, please go to Making SLO. It's in a building you've walked by hundreds of times. It is well worth you stopping in. It's a pleasant atmosphere, really relaxed. You'll find April in there, and she would love to talk to you for as long as you have or as long as she has about the various products in her store that are made by fantastic local people. She has ambitions to continue to just go where the wind takes her or you. She's going to keep going where the wind takes her. And I have a feeling it's going to be in good directions because you're doing extremely important work that is hard. And some people may not understand 100%, but the opportunities that you're providing people are absolutely priceless. And I think that you're a fantastic person for doing so.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So that's where we're going to end this episode. I'm going to have April back and we'll continue to talk about Making SLO. Please be sure to tune in next time where we'll have another fantastic guest talking about their amazing business in SLO County. That's all for now. And as always, rely local, SLO County.
Thank you for watching or listening. Tune in next Friday for episode 4. As always, rely local, SLO County.